Good morning. I'd like to call this voting meeting of the House Finance Committee to order. We'll have a short voting meeting on one bill, and then we will convene a public hearing on two other bills. So let's begin with our senior committee legislative assistant calling the roll. Lori?
Chairman Samuelson,
Here.
Sapita Freites,
Vote by designation. I'm sorry?
excuse me,
Online? She's present online.
Deloso, Fiedler,
Vote by designation.
Frail, Gallagher,
Here online.
Kenyatta,
Vote by designation.
McNeil, Mursky,
Online, present online.
Greg Scott,
Vote by designation.
Rab,
Vote by designation.
I skipped him, Waddell,
Vote by designation.
Waxman,
And a vote by designation.
and Webster. Chairman Griner,
Here,
Bernstein,
a vote by designation.
Brown, Fritz, Jones,
A vote by designation.
Kephart, Kutz,
A vote by designation.
Mako,
Vote by designation.
McCreary,
Rob's online. He's present.
Rader, Rossi. We have enough folks.
All 25 accounted for. We'd like to start by calling up a bill we had a public hearing on a week ago, 2 weeks ago, and it's House Bill 653, sponsored by Representative Bob Freeman. Do I have a motion to bring forward House Bill 653? Motion made by Representative McNeil. Is there a second? Seconded by Representative Deloso. I'd like our research analyst, Shannon Snell, will give an analysis of the bill, and then we'll talk about an amendment.
Thank you. House Bill 653 establishes a tax credit program for rehabilitation of historic mill and factory buildings. And under this bill, there are three different options. There is a tax credit for substantial rehabilitation of the building, and that is up to 25% of the rehabilitation and reconstruction costs. And that tax credit can be carried forward for up to 7 taxable years. The second option is a tax credit for the business that is located in the rehabilitated building. And that is a tax credit for the amount of increase in wages or salaries for employees that are located in that business. And that is up to $7,000 per employee. And the final option is a tax credit for interest paid on loans for either the building owner or the business that's located in the building. And the building owner would be eligible for a tax credit of up to $25,000 per year on interest paid on loans for the substantial rehabilitation of the certified building. And the program is currently capped at $13 million per year, and it would be administered by the Department of Community and Economic Development. And there would also be a process in the bill by which the municipalities would submit a list to DCED of buildings that they believe are eligible for the program, and then the Pennsylvania Historical and Museum Commission would approve that list based on their standards.
Thank you. And to put this in context, we have previously voted 2 weeks ago and expansion of Pennsylvania's existing historic preservation tax credit. That was the Prokopiak bill we advanced out of this committee, trying to take that existing program from $5 million to $20 million. This is a new proposal for $13 million, focused on rehabilitation of mills and factories. If it's all right with the committee, I would have an omnibus amendment. Let's talk about the amendment, and then, or unless anybody has a question right now, the amendment would make a couple of changes to the bill in chief. Do I have a motion to bring forward the Samuelson amendment? Representative Friel made the motion. Representative Webster seconded. Could I have Shannon discuss the Samuelson amendment?
This is A05228 by Chair Samuelson. This amendment makes a number of changes to the bill. It changes certified building to program eligible building and changes it from a certification process to a designation process. It updates several definitions and also adds a definition for taxpayer. It gives municipalities the flexibility to choose the manner in which they agree to meet the requirements for submitting buildings to DCED for potential inclusion in the program. It provides that the tax credit for increased salaries and wages paid to employees of the business that's located in the rehabilitated building will be $2,500 per employee per year for up to 3 taxable years. It clarifies that the interest tax credit for the that is available to a taxpayer who owns the rehabilitated building, and it clarifies that it is for interest paid on loans made solely and exclusively for rehabilitation of a program eligible building. It directs DCED to establish guidelines for administration of the tax credit program and permits DCED to collect a 3% administrative fee to administer this program. It makes the program eligible, it makes the program available beginning in tax year 2025. And finally, it adds this tax credit program to the oversight requirements for many of our Commonwealth tax credit programs that was added to the Tax Reform Code by Act 25 of 2021.
Thank you, Shannon. Let me discuss my intent with this amendment and then open it up to questions. Since our public hearing on this bill 2 weeks ago, I've had discussions with Chair Bob Freeman, his Executive Director, John Castelli, who's sitting right here in our meeting, the Department of Community and Economic Development on amendments to the original House Bill 653. The review by the Historic and Museum Commission is still in the bill. We do give the communities a little bit of flexibility. We want this communities involved, but we take out 4 words saying they have to adopt an ordinance. We just want the communities to have review, but we don't specify that. This is a bill that includes 3 different tax credits. And let me just talk about those. We did vote on the Prokopiak bill, which has Pennsylvania's existing tax credit, trying to expand that, which is 25% of the historic renovation costs. So if someone spends $1 million renovating a historic building, under our existing tax credit, they would get $250,000, 25%. Part 1 of the Representative Freeman's bill has a similar 25% tax credit for the renovation. So that mirrors the other program and focused on mills and factories. Part 3 is also available to the owner of the building, the mill, and would give them a tax credit for some of the interest paid. If they're taking out loans to do this historic renovation of the mill or factory, there would be a tax credit for that. As amended, if we adopt this amendment, that would be limited to $25,000. So I do realize under the existing historic preservation tax credit, somebody making $1 million investment could get $250,000. If they're doing it down at the mill or the factory in the town, you could get $275,000. You could get $250,000 for the under the main tax credit, but an additional $25,000 under the interest tax credit. That's the intent of tax credit number 1 and tax credit number 3. In between number 2 is for the folks that are actually opening the business in the old mill or factory. You're opening a restaurant, you're opening a dance studio, you're bringing a business from the industrial park downtown to the old mill. We have a per job tax credit. The original bill had $7,000. The intent was a one-time $7,000 per job. My amendment would change that to mirror another Pennsylvania tax credit that started under the Wolf administration, the new jobs tax credit, which is $2,500 per job for 3 years. So under the amendment, this program would also be $2,500 per job for 3 years. Somebody opening a restaurant, hiring 10 full-time employees, could get $2,500 per job for a 3-year period. That's the intent of the three different tax credits. And I do open it up to questions from the committee. Representative Rader.
I sat so you could see me this time. I generally am in favor of tax credits. I think they do spur economic growth. My only concern is we're doing a lot of tax credits, and we're spending a lot of money and taking a lot of revenue money out of the revenue stream. So that's a concern of mine. I'll continue to vote for them, but there may be a point in time where I'll stop because I just think we're just doing too many of them and increasing them too much. That's just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Rader. Any other comments? I do want to note for the record, Representative Waxman and Representative Mirsky are present. Representative Friel?
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed we, on the labor piece of this, that went from 7,000, the original bill, down to 2,500. What was the, did I read that change correctly? And what's the driver of the labor change?
So we have other tax credits in Pennsylvania per job. We had one that was done 2 years ago in the tax code for jobs near an airport, an airport development tax credit. That was $2,100 for 10 years. The new jobs tax credit that was done about 7 or 8 years ago is $2,500 for 3 years. The magnitude of this $7,000 all in 1 year, I thought it was better to spread it out, make it mirror the existing new jobs Pennsylvania, so $2,500 for 3 years. Also, somebody starting a restaurant, a dance studio, bringing a business downtown might benefit from having a 3-year tax credit for their new jobs and not just a one-time shot of $7,000.
Thank you very much.
Any other comments on the Samuelson amendment? Questions? Yes. Okay. I'd like to ask a roll call vote on the amendment. What's the number? Amendment 5228. 5228. Amendment 5228. If Lori Smith could call the roll.
Chairman Samuelson,
Yes.
Sapita Freites,
Yes by designation.
Yes.
Yes, but, and for the members online, I'm also going to be doing by designation. I guess that's one of our rules.
he's on mine. He said here.
Yes, by designation. Thank you, Representative Cepeda Freitas.
Deloso, Fiedler,
Yes, by designation.
Frail, Gallagher,
Yes.
Kenyatta,
Yes, by designation.
McNeil, Mirsky,
Yes.
Rab,
Yes, by designation.
Scott,
Yes, by designation.
Waddell,
Yes, by designation.
Waxman, Webster, Chairman Griner,
Yes.
Bernstein,
Yes by designation.
Brown, Fritz, Jones,
Yes by designation.
Kephart, Kutz,
Yes by designation.
Mako,
Yes by designation.
McCurry,
Yes by designation.
Rader, Rossi.
25 votes in favor. The amendment is adopted. Is there any discussion on the bill as amended?
gonna need roll call.
Roll call vote on House Bill 653 as amended.
Samuelson,
Yes?
Sapita Freites,
Yes by designation online?
Delosa, Fiedler,
Yes by designation?
Frail, Gallagher,
Yes.
Ye- Yes by designation online?
Kenyatta,
Yes by designation.
McNeil, Mursky,
Yes.
Rab,
Yes by designation?
Scott,
Yes by designation.
Waddell,
Yes by designation.
Waxman, Webster, Griner,
Yes.
Bernstein,
Yes by designation.
Brown, Fritz, Jones,
Yes by designation.
Kephart, Kutz,
Yes by designation.
Mako,
Yes by designation.
McCreary,
Yes by designation.
Rader, Rossi.
23 votes in favor, 2 votes opposed. House Bill 653 as amended is reported from the House Finance Committee. Thank you. With no other business for this voting meeting, I will adjourn the voting meeting of the House Finance Committee. Now let me convene a public hearing of the House Finance Committee on 2 pieces of legislation. It is budget season. There's a lot of proposals that this committee has talked about over the last 18 months that we've advanced to the House or to the Senate in terms of ideas that we think should be part of the tax code. We have 2 proposals before us this morning that are being talked about in Harrisburg, so let's talk about them at the House Finance Committee. So I'd like to bring forward Representative Jesse Topper, who has proposed House Bill 1404 concerning the accelerated sales tax. Representative Topper,
Thank
the
you, Mr.
distinguished
Chairman.
chair of the Education Committee.
Well, it is actually really nice not to be up there for a committee meeting or hearing, considering Chair Schweier has held about 60 of them so far this year. So I do appreciate this opportunity. This is a relatively simple bill, but a bill that would bring relief to businesses across the Commonwealth, particularly a lot of our small businesses. The accelerated sales tax was put forth in 2009. It became a law. I believe it was Act 48 or 49 of that year. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania was about to have and it was recognized that there was going to be a budget crisis looming. So it was somewhat of a cash grab by forcing businesses to pay the estimated sales tax as opposed to what they were actually going to have in terms of sales tax and be able to submit that to the Commonwealth. So there was a cash flow issue where the Commonwealth was able to get that money earlier and help plug some budget holes. But as sometimes happens with state government, these programs last longer than what they were intended to, and we still have it to this day. Many businesses find it very difficult, particularly the paperwork that surrounds estimating the sales tax and paying on a sales tax when they have not made the sale yet. Creates the cash flow problem for our businesses as opposed to state government. So this would simply repeal that 2009 law, allowing businesses to pay tax on the actual sales that they make. I think we're in a far different position financially as a Commonwealth. We can certainly, it doesn't affect our bottom line. It does affect a cash flow issue into the Commonwealth for year one as we make the change. I believe we're in a position to do that now and really do something tangible to benefit particularly our small businesses. They are the ones that bear the brunt of this extra paperwork and also can sometimes cost them a great deal of money based on whether they might be a seasonal business or a business that could be making a certain amount of money in one time frame of the year but not another. So I think this would go a long way to helping businesses across our Commonwealth and something that we can do to tangibly assist small businesses in our communities. So I'd appreciate consideration of this, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Topper. if you could stick, are you able to stick around?
Absolutely.
Could I bring our testifier up? And to testify on House Bill 1404, we have Neil Lesher, Director of Government Affairs for the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry. And then I'll open it up to questions after.
Thanks. Appreciate the assistance. It's been a thank you, Chairman, for the opportunity to be here today in support of Representative Topper's legislation. It's been a while since I've shared a microphone with Representative Topper. Last time it was on a podcast, but happy to do so again. So I'll get a little bit into the mechanics of how the prepayment system works. Absolutely support everything that Representative Topper just said. The current system of prepaying sales tax is an administrative nightmare for our small businesses. So it's actually a 50% prepayment on a monthly basis. So what actually mechanically happens is every month a business is actually making 2 sales tax payments to the Commonwealth. They're filing a return and they're reconciling the previous period. There's a credit on there for the 50% that was prepaid for that period in the last month, and then they're making a separate payment for the prepayment for the next month. So there's actually 24 payments in a year for the average business to do that. Best case scenario, that's additional billable hours for that business owner with their CPA. We love CPAs, but best case scenario, it's additional hour or so that they're paying a CPA to do that work. Worst case scenario, it's the business owner themselves, trying to figure it all out using QuickBooks and what they owe, which is taking them away from the actual labor of love, which is their business. As Representative Topper said, this was put into place as a one-time budgetary balancing maneuver that essentially allowed the Commonwealth to get 12.5 months of sales tax revenue in that budget year, and then continue with 12 months of sales tax revenue going forward. But businesses have been feeling the brunt of that now since 2009. And I think the General Assembly has taken the wise approach in the last several years to pay off some of those one-time budget things that have been done through the years. This, in our minds, is kind of the last remaining budgetary gimmick from the past that hasn't been resolved by the General Assembly. The benefit, unlike many things that this committee often has to weigh, is that from a fiscal impact to the state, there is a sizable fiscal impact, but it's a one-time fiscal impact. And the benefit then for our small businesses going forward is that administrative relief and the relief from the administrative burden of collecting sales tax on behalf of the state. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention one other proposal that Representative Friel has also introduced, kind of to make matters worse in this whole situation. In 2016, faced with a similar budgetary issue, the General Assembly sought fit to significantly cap what's known as the vendor discount. Prior to 2016, businesses were able to essentially keep 1% of the sales tax that they collected to offset their administrative costs. I know this committee has done a deep dive in credit card fee issues related to sales tax collections, things like that. We believe that's another bill that would provide significant relief. Representative Friel's bill does not totally uncap it like before, but it does provide for a decent increase for our small business community that would provide relief for those businesses that do the administrative work on behalf of the state of collecting sales tax. Happy to answer any questions that the members have.
Okay, thank you very much, and please stick around for questions. I do want to note that we did get a analysis from the Department of Revenue last night. I know we've asked for it before, but we did get the numbers, and I passed it out to the committee members. And I do understand that the testimony, the year that this started was under the Rendell administration. My understanding, it was a one-time thing under the Rendell administration. It was made permanent under the Corbett administration in either 2011 or 2012 and has been permanent ever since. And as Mr. Lesher said, the first year that it happened, the state got 12.5 months of sales tax, and then obviously since then, 12 months. If this bill would pass, the effect would be this time we'd get 11.5 months to go back to the way things were before. So the fiscal impact that we got from the Department of Revenue said the one-time fiscal impact on next year's budget would be $475 million. So obviously, 12 years ago, there was a positive fiscal impact. If this bill would pass, there would be a negative fiscal impact on the state revenues of $475 million. I do want to note one other thing in the Department of Revenue analysis. There's about 113,000 businesses in Pennsylvania who pay monthly sales tax remittances to the state. there's a threshold whether or not you have to pay the accelerated sales tax. So of all of those businesses that pay the monthly sales tax, 113,000, 99,000 of them do not have to pay the accelerated sales tax. They don't have enough annual sales or annual revenues and sales tax collections to trigger that. The threshold is $25,000 in sales tax per quarter. So that would be a business that sells $417,000 worth of taxable items. Or if I annualize that, it would be about $100,000 of sales tax per year. A business that sells about 1.6 million of taxable items. So wouldn't be the small business on the main street that's the coffee shop or the small restaurant. The threshold would be about 1.6 million in annual taxable sales. So if this bill would pass, the impact would be on those businesses, those 14,000 businesses that meet that threshold. And collectively, it would be $475 million. But I did hand that out to all of the committee members. I apologize we didn't get it until last night. Any other committee members have questions or comments? Representative Rader.
Thank you, Jesse, for introducing this. I don't know why you didn't do it years ago. As a small business owner, I couldn't understand what the state was doing. And part of the issue with a small business owner, and I don't, you guys may think $1 million or $2 million is a huge business. It's not. We have a small business and we meet that, but we were more seasonal. So the one quarter I had that was really good threw me into having to do this, and then trying to estimate what my tax is going to be. So if I happen to have a bad month, which I don't know ahead of time, all my money's in at the state level. I've paid it. I've had a bad month. I need the money for my cash flow, and I don't have it. I thought it was the dumbest thing they could ever do to hurt a small business. And the 1% taking that away too, I really didn't like either. But this would really help in that kind of situation. I don't know why you have to pay a guesstimation, and then the state has your money when they shouldn't. And if you underpay it, then you owe a penalty. So you're screwed either way. So thank you so much, Jesse, and you should have done a long time ago, so I blame you for that.
Thank you, Representative Rader. I will say that this bill has been introduced in previous sessions and, in fact, passed out of this committee and the full House unanimously last session. But unfortunately, we are not the only body that gets to make decisions in this august institution, but this has passed unanimously out of the House of Representatives before.
Chair Greiner?
Just a quick comment. I thank Chairman Topper. This has been introduced several times. I think on background, I agree. I'm glad you love CPAs, by the way. Thank you. I will say, though, it is something that we don't, I don't think is really, it is onerous. There's an extra cost to business to do this. This is just a time value. I think, I hate that term gimmicks because I served on appropriations for 8 years because, and you were here too, but, there were things to do to balance the budget. But I will say, when you go back to 2009, when I was not here, it was truly it was just a grab up front. And it's unfortunate that, as you said, most of these, I hate to use the term gimmick, but accounting techniques or procedures that were used have been rectified, and this one hasn't. And I do think, I think you articulated it very well, Chairman Topper, and I think Representative Rader did as well. I mean, he spoke firsthand on the impact it has on small business, and I keep on telling people there's no impact on the bottom line on revenue for the Commonwealth. It just is this one-time. It's just the timing for the one time, and then it gets rectified. Great. I think it's a great bill. Thank you.
Other comments? I have Representative Friel.
I just appreciate the testimony today, especially the second half. But just to reiterate, as a small business, and I was in retail for a long time, and $1.6 million is not a large business. And I realize, the numbers, there's a ton of small businesses that fall under that, but there are a ton of small businesses that are, if you're one retail, you have 2 stores, you're likely going to trip off on this. And those are small businesses with 10 and 15 employees. And I think there's thousands of them that would be impacted by this. So it's not just large businesses. I think it's thousands of the 2-store, 3-store, 15 employees, 10 employees, 5 employees that have to do this. And I owned a business that had to do this with 14 employees. So it's definitely something I think is needed. And thank you for the shout out too. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We got three bills in this hearing. I was trying to state for the record that this would affect of the 113,000 businesses that have to pay monthly sales tax, this would face the largest 10% of those, and the threshold I was trying to define as $100,000 sales tax annually, 1.7 million annual sales of taxable items. Any other comments on Representative Topper's bill? Representative Waxman.
I just wanted to quickly, say that this exact issue was brought to me by somebody in my district not so long ago, and actually last week. And so I'm excited to vote in favor of it. I'm glad that we're considering it, and I haven't gotten a chance to vote it out of committee yet. So we'll just add more of that bipartisan votes from the new members that haven't voted yet to get it out of the House either. So thank you.
Any other comments on House Bill 1404? I thank Representative Topper for taking the time to be with us today, and thank you, Mr. Lesher, for your testimony. The next topic we have is House Bill 2440, sponsored by Representative McNeil and Representative Conklin. And I'd like to start by offering Representative McNeil the chance to make opening comments.
Thank you, Chairman Samuelson, and thank you, Chair Greiner, and members of the committee. Thank you for allowing this committee to take some time to discuss my legislation, House Bill 2440, today. HB 2440 will allow medical cannabis operations to deduct their ordinary and necessary business expenses as they calculate their Pennsylvania taxes. Currently, a federal provision known as 280E does not allow medical cannabis companies to deduct ordinary business expenses from their federal taxes. Although we are not able to change this at the federal level, we can take steps to change this in the Commonwealth's tax code. This legislation provides a pro-Pennsylvania business solution by offering a state-level tax deduction for ordinary and necessary business expenses paid or incurred by a medical cannabis business. There are numerous examples throughout our tax code where we either decouple from the feds or provide additional provisions to encourage more businesses in the Commonwealth. That's exactly what my legislation would do. Regardless of how federal tax law treats medical cannabis businesses, Pennsylvania statute has recognized cannabis as a legal prescription medication since 2016. Medical cannabis companies across the Commonwealth work to help Pennsylvania residents with serious medical conditions. They are doing good work to help PA residents, yet they are being punished during tax season. I think this necessary tax change has particular relevance as I watch communities suffer from the opioid epidemic. I'm disappointed medical cannabis operations, many trying to provide a legal alternative to opioids, are forced to operate at a disadvantage with different rules financially than opioid companies. Personally, I have close friends who take advantage of this. I have seen firsthand what this program has done for my friends and thousands of other residents. It frustrates me that businesses who are helping our Commonwealth's sick, injured, and immune-compromised residents are being punished by our state's tax code. It's an important change that needs to happen. These businesses need to be treated on an equal level. All this legislation will do is ensure medical cannabis companies are treated the same as all other businesses across the Commonwealth. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative McNeil. I also offered the opportunity to Representative Conklin, but he did warn me he has several other meetings going on this morning, so he, if he comes later on in our meeting, I'll give him an opportunity to testify. Next, we have testimony from Meredith Schneider, Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Cannabis Coalition, and David Clapper, Board Chair and Co-founder of Ethos Cannabis. David is online, and Meredith is right here. I'll begin with Meredith.
Good morning, Chairman, and thank you for having me here to testify on behalf of the Pennsylvania Cannabis Coalition. PCC represents the majority of the operators in Pennsylvania's medical marijuana program. Our purpose is to protect and preserve Pennsylvania's emerging cannabis market. A simple technical change to Pennsylvania's tax code can fix a key disconnect between the Commonwealth and federal tax law that will benefit more than 430,000 Pennsylvania patients and the licensed medical marijuana operators who support more than 30,000 jobs in the Commonwealth. HB 2440 makes this change by allowing licensed operators a CNIT tax deduction equal to the amount of ordinary and necessary expenses paid or incurred during the tax year by the organization, which are deductible for all other state legal businesses. Section 280E of the Internal Revenue Code is an outdated tax policy hobbling the Commonwealth's medical marijuana industry by disallowing the deduction of ordinary business expenses. An artifact from the 1980s, Section 280E was designed to keep illegal drug dealers from taking tax deductions on their illegal businesses. So think a drug dealer deducting their Cadillac. The 280E tax penalty was not intended for state-sanctioned and licensed cannabis operators. Acknowledging this, at least 20 states have passed laws to address this disconnect. Section 280E puts Pennsylvania's medical marijuana operators at a disadvantage. Business deductions prohibited by Section 280E keep Pennsylvania's medical marijuana operators from deducting ordinary business expenses such as payroll and rent from gross income. Due to this, licensed operators pay an effective tax rate of 70%. I have included a chart in my written testimony that illustrates the difference in tax liability for medical marijuana operators in the Commonwealth as compared to similarly situated businesses. Exempting state legal cannabis businesses will not result in a significant loss of revenue for the state. In fact, a representative from the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue testified at a Senate Banking and Insurance Committee hearing in March of 2022 that the allowance of a CNIT deduction for business expenses within the medical cannabis industry will result in a small, unknown revenue loss. PIT deductions are already allowed and accounted for within the revenue forecast. Additionally, the fiscal note associated with HB 1219, which the House passed in October of 2023, where similar language was included, demonstrates a minimal impact on state revenue. Access to business deductions will reduce the cost of patient medicine and in turn reduce the illicit cannabis market. Fixing the impact of Section 280E at the state level will increase affordability for Pennsylvania patients. By allowing regular and ordinary business deductions, the legal cannabis industry won't struggle to compete with the often lower-priced illicit products that put patients in danger through the consumption of untested, unregulated products. By eliminating Section 280E, the state will be prioritizing patient health. Reducing the cost of medicine also results in consumers leaving the illicit market to participate in the medical marijuana market, where they can consume safe, regulated products under the care of a physician instead of purchasing potentially dangerous marijuana from the cartel-controlled illegal market. While we applaud the bill sponsors' efforts to move away from the term marijuana by adopting a new definition of medical cannabis business, we do recognize that Pennsylvania statute uses the term marijuana, and thus it is prudent to use the currently accepted term of medical marijuana organizations as opposed to medical cannabis, and would ask that the committee consider reverting to the term medical marijuana organization as used in the language passed by the House in last year's HB 1219. Additionally, as defined in HB 2440, medical cannabis does not explicitly include clinical registrant permits, which make up our first-in-the-nation medical cannabis research program and must be included in this change. Additionally, we would ask that the committee consider making this bill applicable to the current tax year so that relief can be experienced by operators and patients as quickly as possible. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Meredith. I'd now like to call on David Clapper from Ethos Cannabis, who's online.
Morning. I appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you. A lot of what Meredith and the representatives have said covers the topic well. I thought I'd take a minute and just walk through a quick example, if you're accepting of that, to explain to you what an average dispensary, what this means to an average dispensary in the state. I'm a Mennonite dairy farm kid from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. as Meredith said, we appreciate what she talked about with the clinical registrants. We are partnered with Thomas Jefferson University Health System as a clinical registrant in the state. So we operate 9 dispensaries in Pennsylvania and have a grow process as well. But I thought the example that would help the committee would be if you take a business that does $5 million in revenue. A normal cost of goods sold or cost of product in our industry is about 60%. So if you take your $5 million and subtract $3 million that it cost you to purchase the product, you're left with about $2 million of gross profit. Normal businesses would at that point also deduct the cost it takes to operate that business. In our case, that's about $1.5 million to pay payroll mostly, but also things like rent and other costs along with operating the business. And that leaves you with an operating profit on a $5 million dispensary of right around $500,000. Normal businesses, if they're a corporation in the state, would pay a 10% state rate, about a 21% corporate rate. So you would pay tax of about $150,000 and you'd have about a $350,000 profit. But for a marijuana dispensary, in this case, you pay tax on that $2 million of gross profit. So again, if you're paying tax of 31%, the 10% for state, and the 21% for corporate, you actually end up paying $620,000 of taxes and losing about $120,000 of cash out of your pocket to operate the dispensary. And that's where a lot of the dispensaries, in particular in the state, have struggled because you're not allowed to, as Meredith explained, you're not allowed to take those normal and standard deductions. My belief is that when the medical marijuana bill was passed in Pennsylvania in the first place, it was not a predetermined thought to not allow these businesses to take the deduction. That was something that the federal government clearly determined was appropriate when they said that 280E should apply to all cannabis operators, even if they're state licensed. I don't believe when the bill was being put together in Pennsylvania, there was any thought to change that and decouple how the federal return works from the state return. Because as you know, for state purposes, you start with the federal tax return and then pay your state adjustments. So this would actually decouple them, as Meredith said, which would there's about 20 other states that have already done that, understanding that from a state perspective, it has a significant impact.
Thank you, David Clapper. And I want to say, for the record, this committee has dealt with this issue before. 2 years ago, under the previous majority, Chair Pfeiffer had a meeting, and I believe it was Aaron Coffer had an amendment. It passed unanimously out of the Finance Committee, but did not go further to allow growers, processors, and dispensaries in Pennsylvania to take ordinary and necessary business deductions. I appreciate the testimony. I'll open it up to questions from the members. I do want to say that because our corporate net income tax is coupled to the federal, when the federal does not allow this, current law in Pennsylvania, this is not allowed. I appreciate Representative McNeil bringing this bill forward to say we can't change the federal law, but we could change the state law to allow the growers and processors and dispensaries in Pennsylvania to take normal and ordinary and normal business deductions, same deductions that every other business on the street is allowed to take, every other business that's paying CNIT, the corporate net income tax. Thank you. I do want to open it up to discussion from the committee members. Representative DeLoso?
Yeah. Firstly, I'd like to say that I am definitely in favor of this. I believe in a level playing field for all business. But I do have some tough questions. And because there are several dispensaries in my area, and there's a line trying to get in them every morning, are any dispensaries actually losing money and going out of business?
We have seen a lot of mergers and acquisitions. And
that doesn't mean they're going out of business.
No, but there are some of our small businesses who have really, the smaller companies who have really struggled to survive. And we've seen them be forced to put their permits up for sale because of that.
Has anybody lost money on the selling of a permit?
I'd have to look at each individual transaction. That's something that I'm not familiar
seriously
with.
doubt it. But
okay. And, I will say, I think this is also important in terms of last year, the legislature passed Act 63, which sought to level the playing field for some of the grower processors and the small single dispensary permit holders. And this really will allow those operators these deductions as they get those businesses up and running. So I do think it's, it is really important in terms of looking at how those folks are able to invest in those business to continue to level the playing field among the dispensary community.
Well, I'm looking forward to a level playing field. I'm looking forward to those that need medical grade cannabis, to enjoy some of the savings that this should bring about. I'm also looking for some of the savings that this should bring about because you can now deduct the cost of health care for your employees and the cost of defined benefit pension plans. And I hope that none of this is used to pay attorneys in union avoidance campaigns. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Representative Deloso. Chair Greiner?
Yeah, just a couple questions. So at the federal level, I think, help me just understand, they're declassifying marijuana as an illegal drug. I think, and it's going to happen soon.
We think.
Well, let me ask you, so when that happens, then I would suspect the feds are going to allow it as an ordinary, because it's an illegal drug right now. I would suspect that it's going to be allowable, and then we would allow it here in Pennsylvania when that occurs. Is my thinking right on that?
You are, yes. So the rescheduling process has started. The Biden administration initiated the rescheduling process. HHS made a recommendation. That recommendation is now with the DA. There is an extensive comment period open, followed by administrative law judge hearings and things like that. Our very bullish estimates are that we see rescheduling happen sometime this fall prior to the election. There's another school of thought that the process could take upwards of 3 years because of folks objecting to the rescheduling. So once the rescheduling does happen sometime between this fall and 3 years, then the IRS will have to act to change the Internal Revenue Code to eliminate that 280E prohibition, because cannabis will no longer fall under Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. We will believe it will go to Schedule 3. So there is potentially action that will come at the federal level, which automatically would happen here because our tax code is coupled to the federal tax code. This bill seeks to provide relief sooner than the federal relief would come.
I mean, I think it's probably no secret with people, with me, from being from Lancaster County. I've been a strong no on medical marijuana. I've been a strong no on recreational marijuana. So I'm not going to, I'm not voting for this bill. And as a CPA, it's not happening. I can't. I mean, it's currently an illegal drug. And, you can talk about the level playing field. I kind of have to laugh. The amendment that the chairman talked about happened to be on a like-kind exchange bill, which Pennsylvania should have done years ago, if I'm not mistaken. I think it was like-kind exchange. And so, I mean, that was the bill, and I think there was probably an agreement like we do up here. We sometimes vote different ways on amendments in order to get the key bill moving forward. But I will say that, I struggle with this. And the other thing I struggled with was the other testimony, the gentleman's testimony, who was from Lancaster. When he started talking about the math of the money that's lost and the taxes that are lost, when you talk about the number of dispensaries in the state, getting back to my Representative Deloso question about the financial end, that I would disagree with revenue's projection of lost revenue. And I'm telling you, that those numbers, when you start multiplying out the differences, it's a lot. The loss for the state's a lot more than what in that Senate hearing. I'm just saying, you do the math. I don't know how many are S corps, C corps. I mean, that does make a difference in the tax rate. Of
course.
And what have you. So I'm just saying, look. We throw numbers around here. They might say if it's a few million here or there, it might doesn't sound like a big deal. But when you start talking about maybe the numbers I was doing the math there, and I think, well, it should be more than. I mean, I'm just quick and dirty.
Sure.
It's
So
$4
the
million.
state the state also collects revenue from the wholesale transactions of cannabis from the grower processors to the dispensaries. And that the change is, we're not making a change to that tax and that revenue that's being collected. So I think it's important to remember that as well.
I mean,
That's
I
where
just
the
think
bulk of the revenue comes from.
I mean, the reality is, look, level playing field. I get it. I mean, I'm not, but I also, this is a real muddy area. I'm just making a comment. So
Thank you. I do want to add something for the record. As with the other bill, we did ask the Department of Revenue for a fiscal impact. I do know the previous one was $475 million. This one, the numbers we got from Department of Revenue is $1.8 million, but it would continue every year. This would happen. So the numbers they gave us, I apologize once again. We got this last night or this morning, and I did not get it to the committee. 2025, $1.8 million. 2026, $2.1 million. 2027, $2.0 million. 2028, $1.9 million. So in the vicinity of $2 million a year, if this bill would pass. I also want to note for the record, I know there was some discussion of the federal prohibition on business expenses for anything under Schedule 1. The McNeil bill in front of us is very specific. If you look on page 2, line 10, it says the term medical cannabis business shall be a business that has an active grower, processor permit, or dispensary permit for medical cannabis issued by the Department of Health according to state law. So this bill that is before us today would be specific to the businesses that are operating in Pennsylvania, operating because of the 2016 law that allowed medical marijuana in Pennsylvania, and a subset of those businesses, the ones that pay corporate net income tax, because the ones that pay the PIT, that are LLCs, they already can take the business deductions. So I just wanted to point out that the bill is very specific. And of course, if we have to clarify that in an amendment, please open that up to let us know, any committee member. Any other businesses, any other representatives would like to comment on House Bill 2440? I thank Representative McNeil for bringing this before us today. And with no further discussion, this meeting is adjourned.